This morning, I was sitting down to do my connection and quiet practice. It's my intentional start for the day. And I heard the cat flap from another room, from the kitchen. And I had to smile. Immediately, I knew what this episode was going to be about. So here's the thing. My cat's learning how to use the cat flap. And he still seems to forget, even though he can do it. And so this morning, he was meowing pitifully outside, and I went to go help him. And my husband stopped me and said, no, he's only doing that because you're standing there. So rewind to the moment I shared with you, sitting down to do my calm and quiet practice, and I heard the cat flap. So he had come in on his own. So my husband was onto something there. And of course he was right. Because as a nurturer, I always take on more than I should, and I tend to jump in when I don't need to. And I want to talk about this today because it is something that is so relevant to so many of the women that I work with. And I'm stereotyping, I know, but I do tend to have mainly women who come to me with chronic fatigue and burnout. And they all have the same patterns. It's really, really quite interesting. So this holds for women and for partners in same-sex relationships who hold the feminine role, which is also interesting. And unfortunately, this tendency to take on too much, and this tendency to, it's taking on too much, it's holding all the balls in the air, particularly the emotional, mental ones. And then I'm going to speak to you about the impact this has on our health. Okay, because it is a huge part of why we become depleted and experience chronic fatigue, burnout, and chronic overwhelm. So let me give you a further example of my day today. So before 9 a.m., I had fed the animals. I had brought in the washing off the line, hanged up more washing. I had packed the kids' lunch boxes. I had manhandled women handled. I had managed. What is the best word for this? I heard my son in the morning. He is ADHD and he needs to be herded. There's actually a term for it. The OTs talk about body doubling. I had to body double my son a lot this morning because he didn't sleep very well last night. He's got his first exams ever coming up. So I was body doubling him and herding him around. While my daughter she didn't have a good night's sleep. She was in a bad mood. So just being conscious of where they are both emotionally at the moment and what's going on for them. Making sure they both have their supplements. Her for her anxiety, him so he can focus at school. And also to help manage his anxiety a bit. That package them together, put them all together. My daughter's actually mainly quite capable, but my son, put him together, move him to the door, and then my husband could take him for school. Once I'd left, I also had to answer a question from the gardener about something that needed to happen on the property. I met someone who came to collect something. I sent a quote to a client for a business that my husband and I share and just organized some practicalities with her. I confirmed some accommodation details with a person who had a query about coming to stay in December. Gosh, there was more. There were many, many things. And on top of all of this, eventually I sat down to make a list, by the way, because please, I'm always trying to be a hero and keep it all in my head, but it uses up vital energy. Our brains use up, even though our brains are this amount of our entire body, it's a small amount of our entire body, it uses up to 20% or even more of our energy. So our brains use up a lot of energy. Make it easier for yourself. Write lists. I often couldn't be bothered to write lists, and then I use up too much of my energy. So I sat down and wrote a list, and on that list I also added, remind my husband to take lunch for the kids when he fetches them. Oh, that's what I also had to organize. I mean, I had to confirm my son's Afrikaans lesson after school and just send the Afrikaans teacher the latest timetable, the study timetable that's just been sent out for exams. I also had to, I'm trying to confirm arrangements because he needs to be in a gala on a Saturday and another event on a Sunday in another city. And so I had to organize accommodation for that. And what I'm trying to get to here is that my husband is a practical man. I'm very, very grateful for that. He took the kids to school, which was amazing for me because I then can get going with all the other stuff I need to do. He's taking them after school. He's taking my son to the lesson, picking up my daughter because I have clients and I can't do that. And I'm super grateful for that. But he doesn't carry the emotional load and the mental load. He isn't aware of what's going on with my kids emotionally a lot of the time. I mean, often it's also quite obvious some mornings, or some days, but a lot of the time he also doesn't know. And like I say, I'm stereotyping, but this is often the norm with the female in the relationship, or the person holding the female role. They are the nurturers, and they take on a lot. So my husband runs a business, I run a business, we run a joint business, but I carry the most of the load at home as well, particularly the emotional and mental load. He will obviously do practical stuff around the house. And this is something that I've had to seriously look at in my life, because when I became unwell, when I crashed with what was diagnosed as adrenal fatigue back in 2013, which I believe is all just a part of nervous system dysregulation, I had to really understand why I was in the place I was in. And a huge part of it was that I try and control everything, and then I take on too much. And like I said, I see this pattern in many of the women that I work with. So I've really had to watch myself. I've had to question what I'm taking on. I've had to hold myself back from stepping in where I don't need to. I've had to hand over things that I shouldn't have taken on in the first place. So as much as I still continue this pattern in many ways, I'm now a lot more conscious of it, and there are many ways in which I also don't do it. To be honest, I'm going to be very honest, my husband battles with his mental health. And so since he lost his business in 2012, and he's been trying to set up a new business, and we've moved and a whole lot of things have happened, I have also tended to take on more because I was protecting him. But I've also had to learn that I'm enabling him in many ways. So this is a whole different layer to this. And maybe some of you can also recognize that. Because when it comes to the emotional stuff, many times women do the work when men don't. Sadly. Because men are really, really needing it right now. And again, please forgive me for stereotyping. But this is what I see with so many of my clients. So let me give you another example. Why do I do the kids' lunches? They could do their lunches. And in fact, I know my daughter could do hers easily enough. But my son, I don't even want to think about what it would involve. It would be pretty crazy trying to get him to just get his lunch together. It would add like a good 10 minutes onto our morning routine. And so I just know it's going to be easier, right? There's that. And I know that it's going to annoy my husband if my son is late. And then he's going to shout at the kids. So what do? I become the peacekeeper, right? How many of you can resonate with that? All of these roles, I know in my life, and I'm fairly sure it's the same for many of you, they are trauma-informed roles. Okay, to some degree, to a large degree, collectively and societally, it has often been the female who has been expected to take on the nurturing, which includes the mental load, the details, the emotions. And so we've watched our mothers do it. We've watched our grandmothers do it. And we've done it without really thinking. But in many cases, it's also because when we did those things, we received attention or validation, or at the very least, we avoided rejection, criticism, people shouting, whatever it might have been. So we become rescuers, fixers, carers. And we try and hold all the balls up in the air and keep control over everything. Because that is what kept us safe. That's what helped us to feel good enough. And that's what helps us to feel worthy. Good enough, worthy, safe. Just generally what we did as adaptations to manage our nervous systems. Isn't that big? It's really, really big. And here's the crazy thing, is that just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it. Because in the process of doing all of this, it is exhausting. It is overwhelming. And we seldom stop to check in. Is this in my greatest and highest good that I'm doing this right now? What are my needs in this moment? Are my needs being met? Those questions very seldom get asked. And so we run on empty and push ourselves to be spread thin everywhere, hold all those balls up in the air, and our nervous systems take the brunt of it. It's also because on some level we're activated by some past trauma. So for me, my husband shouting and getting grumpy is completely my father. And what did I do when I was younger? I kept the peace. So I've had to really work with the trauma in myself to allow him to not be okay. To allow my husband to be in a bad mood and to be grumpy, and to just know that, and to have the compassion for him that he's battling. And that this is not the same as when I was younger. So I've had to really work with my trauma as well, so that my nervous system is not dysregulated by his behavior, which causes me then to bring in my trauma modifications and then exhaust myself. I'm so curious about how this is resonating with you and if it makes any sense. So basically, our nervous systems are already dysregulated and activated because of possible past patterns and traumas that haven't been resolved, and because many of the women that I see have sensitive nervous systems already, so they're very empathic and feel things deeply, so they can pick up the upset son and the upset husband and the grumpy daughter, whatever it might be, and can feel it in their bodies. So this is activating. As soon as our nervous systems are activated, we are not producing energy. Okay, like literally, our mitochondria cannot produce energy when we are stressed. And there's many other ways. When the nervous system is activated, we're not in that state, the ventral vagal state, where we are able to heal and rejuvenate. So there's that happening, and then we're also spending all the energy on the coping mechanisms. So we're depleting ourselves further. So there's those two processes that are happening. Why? Like I said, that it's trauma-informed behaviors, and it's societal expectations that we don't even question. So where does this leave you? So I want to invite you, it's a gentle invitation to look at your own lives and see where you are taking on things that you don't need to take on, possibly to keep other people happy or to keep the peace. Where you could possibly hand something over, or let one small thing go that maybe you don't actually need to do. I mean, I do this all the time. Even this morning, I caught myself starting to put my son's study file together. I was like, what are you doing? He can do this when he comes home from school. And I don't want to take away the opportunity from him to learn a skill as well by doing it for him. So this is a pattern that's deep in me that I've had to really watch for. And I just invite you to do the same. Is to look for this pattern and not judge it, but hold it with compassion. To notice what's going on with your nervous system. And to ask yourself gently, what can I let go of? What am I taking on that I don't need to take on? What can I ask someone else to do for me? And notice what's happening in your nervous system if you do have to ask. If you do have to ask for help. What is that like?